My name is Stella Gray, and I'm 30. For the past 2.5 years, I've been dating Alex. Charming, witty, frustratingly handsome, and utterly convincing when he wants to be. We'd been talking about moving in together, casually at first, and then with more seriousness over the last few weeks. Our relationship, at least on the surface, felt solid. I thought I knew him. I thought I trusted him. That evening, we were at La Bella Vita, our favorite Italian spot tucked in the corner of the city where the lighting made every meal feel cinematic. The smell of garlic and fresh basil filled the air. The low hum of conversation around us should have felt cozy, but I had an unshakable sense that something was about to happen. We were halfway through a bottle of red wine, laughing over some anecdote Alex had pulled from his week at work, when he stopped mid-laugh. His eyes darkened, a strange gravity pulling him inward. "Stella," he said, voice low, measured, like he'd been rehearsing this in front of a mirror. "I've been doing some soul-searching." I smiled, leaning forward. "Oh, and what did you discover, Mr. Philosopher?" He twisted his fork in his hand. The next words almost made me choke on my wine. "I think we should have an open relationship." The words hung between us like smoke. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him correctly. "What?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. I put down my fork, feeling the polished wooden table suddenly cold beneath my palms. Alex leaned back, casual, as if revealing this secret was as normal as discussing what movie to see next Friday. "Monogamy is outdated. If you really love me, you'll want me to explore all aspects of myself, with other people." My stomach dropped. "All aspects?" I asked, trying to make sense of the words. "Are you saying, have you already—" My voice caught. No, he said quickly, and then, chillingly, "See, Stella, this is exactly the toxic jealousy I'm talking about. If you can't handle me dating other people, then you're not evolved enough. You're not ready for the kind of love I want to give." A shiver ran down my spine. His words weren't just shocking, they were weaponized, calculated. "So, let me get this straight," I said, voice trembling but forcing composure. "You're asking me to accept this, theoretically, because it's modern and I need to evolve?" "That's right," he said. He smiled like he'd already won, like he expected me to nod in agreement and bless this surreal violation of trust. I could feel my chest tighten. The clinking of cutlery from the tables around us, the low hum of conversation, the smell of sauce. Everything became background noise to the panic rising in my chest. My hands twitched, wanting to reach for my phone, but I couldn't. My brain screamed at me. Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. As I sat there, the conversation replayed in my mind like a film on loop. A warning I'd brushed off months ago surfaced. Ethan, Alex's best friend, had casually said once, "Just watch out. Alex can be complicated." I'd laughed it off at the time. I wish I hadn't. "Stella?" Alex's voice cut through the fog of my thoughts. He leaned forward, eyes glinting with impatience. I need a minute," I muttered. I stood abruptly, startling him. I dropped a 20 on the table for my half of the wine, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I'll walk outside." Outside, the crisp night air hit me like a wall. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement. The sounds of passing cars and distant laughter blurred. I felt exposed, betrayed, the foundation of my relationship crumbling beneath me. I couldn't stop thinking. Has he already been doing this? Is this just an excuse? The more I thought about it, the tighter my chest became. I remembered the subtle signs, the late-night texts he'd shrugged off, the phone that always seemed to vanish into his pocket. Could I have been so blind? I tried to ground myself with logic. Maybe he was serious about growth, connection, and modern love. But deep down, I knew, no, this wasn't about love. Love didn't make you feel like the floor had been ripped out from under you at your favorite restaurant. Love didn't call someone toxic for asking a simple question. I texted Ethan that night. I hadn't meant to reach out. He was Alex's best friend, yes, but he had always been different, quietly observant, subtly protective. And when my message buzzed with a reply, it was calm, steady. "Stella, are you okay?" I stared at the words, the little vibration of my phone in my hand, and I felt a flicker of hope. Someone had seen through the charming mask Alex wore. Someone was on my side. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the dinner again and again. I realized I had two choices: ignore the warning signs, pretend nothing happened, and risk losing myself in Alex's manipulations, or confront the truth, no matter how painful. My stomach churned at the thought of discovery. Foreshadowing whispered in the dark. The cracks in Alex's perfect image weren't new. They'd been there all along, hidden under charm, laughter, and carefully timed affection. And someone had been watching. Someone who would become my anchor when everything else fell apart. I didn't know it yet, but the first step toward clarity, toward real connection, wasn't confronting Alex. It was paying attention, and that attention would soon lead me to Ethan. The next few days felt unreal, as if I was walking through a fog I couldn't escape. I kept replaying Alex's words, the ease with which he had dismissed me as toxic, not evolved enough. Every little moment of our past together now felt like a staged performance. That laugh at my jokes, the casual hand on my shoulder, even the warmth of his smile, it all carried a hollow echo I couldn't ignore. I began noticing things I had previously shrugged off. The way his phone buzzed incessantly, and he would subtly tilt the screen away from me. The way he sometimes answered texts with a clipped, almost defensive tone when I wandered too close. The little lies, so small they could be mistaken for forgetfulness, stacked up in my chest like stones. And then came Ethan. It started innocently. A text. "Stella, you okay?" I stared at it on my phone as if it had been sent from another world. Ethan, Alex's best friend, the quiet one who always seemed to know too much, had reached out. I hesitated. This was Alex's best friend. Could I trust him? But something in his tone, steady and calm, reminded me of the instinctual warnings I'd brushed off months ago. I don't know, I typed back. I think something's wrong. Something with Alex. His response was immediate, gentle, and careful. Trust your instincts. Listen to yourself. Don't let anyone gaslight you. That phrase, gaslight, pulled me forward like a lifeline. It resonated in the pit of my stomach. Ethan wasn't pushing me, wasn't telling me what to do. He was simply giving me the space to see clearly. I started paying attention, and what I saw confirmed my worst fears. Alex was lying, not in small, accidental ways, but deliberately. Profiles on dating apps appeared under slight variations of his name. Secret text conversations he left open for only a second before swiping closed. Dates he claimed were work meetings. One evening, I caught a glimpse of a calendar notification on his laptop, an entry named Dinner with L. My heart sank. The pattern was undeniable. He was seeing multiple people, all while sitting across from me, laughing as if nothing existed outside our apartment. I confronted him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Alex, I think you're seeing other people." He looked at me, amusement flashing briefly before he put on the mask of calm. "Stella, don't be ridiculous. That's exactly the toxic jealousy I was warning you about. If you can't handle me living freely, maybe you're the problem." The words hit like a physical blow. My throat tightened, my hands trembled. He hadn't just lied. He'd turned the tables, made me feel unstable, irrational, and guilty for noticing the truth. The tension was suffocating. I left his apartment that night, the rain tapping a sharp rhythm against the pavement, matching the storm inside my chest. I walked without a destination, each step fueling the growing realization. I couldn't trust him. Not anymore. Ethan remained my anchor. Over the next weeks, we began talking more, not just texts, but long phone calls that stretched into the early hours of the morning. I told him things I couldn't tell anyone else. The fears, the doubts, the creeping suspicion that Alex was manipulating me. And he didn't judge. He listened. He remembered the details. He helped me piece together the evidence I had so far. Screenshots, mismatched schedules, inconsistencies in Alex's stories, all of it pointed to the same conclusion. One rainy night, I found myself staring at Alex's phone again, a small rebellion against the gaslighting he had perfected. The screen illuminated names, places, subtle hints of a life I had no part in. My hand shook as I documented everything. For the first time, I felt a grim clarity. He was not the man I thought I knew. Ethan's support didn't stop there. He quietly reminded me of the warning signs I'd overlooked, the way Alex would belittle my concerns, the little lies about work, the sudden trips and meetings that never made sense. "It's patterns, Stella," Ethan said once. "Trust patterns, not words. He's showing you who he is, over and over." I felt a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. He was Alex's best friend, after all, and yet he had chosen to be honest, to provide clarity when I needed it most. The emotional turning point came one night when I confronted Alex again, armed with evidence, screenshots of his profiles, dates, and overlapping schedules. His reaction was chilling. Not shame, not remorse, just defensiveness, mockery, and the same gaslighting tone that had haunted me. "You really think you know everything, Stella?" he said, voice sharp. "You're seeing patterns where none exist? You're paranoid, toxic." I froze, the words cutting through the last remnants of my trust. I realized then that it wasn't just the cheating that hurt. It was the manipulation, the twisting of truth, the casual dismissal of my intuition, the way he framed honesty as toxicity. That night, I made a decision. I would no longer live in the shadow of Alex's deception. I would step away, gather evidence, reclaim my peace. And in that decision, I began to understand something else. Ethan wasn't just a friend anymore. There was a subtle warmth in his support, a closeness that went beyond casual concern. I caught myself noticing the way he listened, how he remembered little details, how he made me feel seen when Alex had made me invisible. But I pushed the thought away. Alex was still in the picture, still dangerous. I couldn't risk anything else. Still, the seed had been planted. Suspicion had turned into clarity. Betrayal had turned into resolve, and in the quiet, under the soft glow of streetlights, I realized that my life was about to change. Not because of Alex, but because I had chosen to see the truth. And someone would be there, quietly, when I needed it most. By now my world had narrowed into two realities. Alex, the man I thought I knew but couldn't trust, and Ethan, the friend I had overlooked, whose quiet presence was becoming the only thing I could cling to. It began subtly. A text from Ethan in the middle of the day. "Are you eating? You sound tense." Small, almost insignificant. But in that simple sentence, I felt seen. He didn't pry, he didn't demand. He just acknowledged me. And in that acknowledgement, I found a sliver of peace I hadn't felt in months. Our friendship grew carefully, almost imperceptibly. Coffee meetups became lunches, lunches became walks, and each encounter revealed more of him. Patient, perceptive, quietly protective. He knew the story of Alex, of my suspicions, of the emotional chaos I was trapped in, but he never pushed me. He just let me speak, and when I faltered, he listened harder. It wasn't long before he began sharing the evidence he had quietly collected over the months. Dating app screenshots, conflicting schedules, text messages Alex had carelessly left open. My stomach would twist as I looked through them, a mix of anger and validation. Ethan had seen through Alex's charm long before I did. And yet, he had stayed silent, waiting for me to notice for myself. I remember one night in particular. We were at a small bookstore, the smell of paper and coffee mingling, the city's neon lights filtering through the tall windows. We laughed over a ridiculous self-help book titled How to Manifest Your Perfect Partner. And then it happened. I realized I hadn't thought about Alex once, not for an entire afternoon. My chest felt lighter, my shoulders unburdened, and it hit me. Maybe I was free. Ethan noticed my pause. He tilted his head, eyebrows raised. "Something on your mind?" I laughed nervously. "Just noticing I haven't thought about him today. For once." "That's progress," he said softly. And in the way he said it, there was something more, something that made my heart skip. Despite the connection building between us, I hesitated. Ethan was Alex's best friend. My conscience was tangled with guilt, worry, and an unspoken fear of repeating mistakes. What if I misread his kindness? What if my attraction was just a result of stress, a craving for safety in the middle of chaos? But Ethan was careful, patient, and that patience, over days and weeks, allowed trust and something deeper to grow. One evening, he suggested we grab dinner. Simple, casual, no strings. I agreed, even though a small part of me worried that Alex might find out. Over pasta and low-lit candles, conversation flowed easily. Laughter came naturally. For the first time since Alex's betrayal, I felt normal, safe, and unjudged. Ethan wasn't just a confidant. He was someone I wanted near, someone whose presence was comforting, whose voice felt like home. Meanwhile, Alex was escalating. He noticed our growing closeness and responded with the same toxic patterns he'd used for months: charm, guilt, and manipulation. A text here, a call there, each crafted to make me doubt myself. He tried to paint Ethan as opportunistic, a friend who couldn't resist my vulnerability. But by now, I could see through it. His words were empty, desperate attempts to regain control over a narrative he no longer owned. There were nights I would lie awake, listening to the faint hum of the city, heart pounding, wondering if I was doing the right thing. But every interaction with Ethan, every laugh, every shared glance, every conversation that left me feeling understood, reminded me that I wasn't alone, not anymore. The tipping point came subtly. Ethan and I were leaving a bookstore after discovering a collection of old travel guides. It was raining lightly. We were both laughing under one umbrella, sharing warmth in the chill. A passing car splashed water onto the sidewalk, and I found myself gripping Ethan's arm instinctively. He looked down at me, eyes soft, and smiled. "I think I'm starting to like you," I whispered, almost to myself. He didn't respond immediately. He just walked a little closer, letting the silence linger, letting the words settle. And then, gently, "I've been hoping you'd feel that way." The admission wasn't rushed. It wasn't explosive. But in that quiet, mundane moment, something shifted. The chaos, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, they all became part of the past. Alex was still a presence, still a threat in the background, but for the first time I could imagine a life where trust, honesty, and connection weren't hollow words. We didn't announce anything to the world. We didn't post photos or declare our newfound relationship. We stayed careful, private, letting the bond grow organically. And that secrecy wasn't about shame, it was about clarity, about ensuring that what we had was real, undisturbed by external pressures or Alex's inevitable attempts at disruption. Even as Alex raged, called, and tried to manipulate, the evidence Ethan had collected became my shield. I had proof, clarity, and the courage to stand firm. And with Ethan beside me, I felt invincible in a way I hadn't felt with Alex, even during the happiest moments of our past relationship. The first spark of true happiness since the betrayal wasn't marked by fireworks or dramatic declarations. It was in a shared smile, a comfortable silence, the quiet knowledge that we were building something honest, genuine, and safe. And deep down I knew Alex had underestimated me. He had underestimated Ethan. And in the slow, quiet moments that stretched between us, I realized I had found something Alex could never take away: a partner who saw me, understood me, and wanted nothing more than to be with me, not to manipulate, not to control, not to gaslight, but simply to love. By now, the pattern was undeniable. Alex was spiraling. His casual charm, his carefully crafted words, and his manipulations had been laid bare. Stella Gray, the woman who had once trusted him implicitly, was no longer blinded by his theatrics. I had collected evidence, yes, but more importantly, I had regained my voice, my instincts, and my sense of self-worth. Alex tried everything: calls at odd hours, texts dripping with false remorse, messages painting himself as the victim, twisting the story of our relationship as if he could rewrite the past. He even attempted to rally mutual friends, portraying me as overreacting, jealous, paranoid. But every effort crumbled under the weight of facts: screenshots, dating profiles, overlapping schedules, and the timeline Ethan had helped me compile. It was almost satisfying watching him fail. Every lie he told had already been exposed, every manipulation neutralized. He had built a world around deception, and it was collapsing, quietly but irrevocably. Ethan and I remained careful at first. We didn't rush into labels or public displays. We let the bond solidify in private, nurtured in the quiet moments: late-night coffee walks, weekend bookstore hunts, shared laughter over ridiculous movie trailers. With him, honesty wasn't an effort. It was effortless. And the contrast with Alex couldn't have been more stark. One afternoon, we were at a small cafe, the sun streaming through the windows, the aroma of fresh bread and espresso comforting. Ethan reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. "Stella, I think it's time we stop hiding, he said softly. I hesitated for only a second, thinking of Alex's inevitable reaction, of the drama he might try to stir. But then I looked at Ethan, steady, warm, unwavering, and I knew. Privacy had been our safety net, but now it was time to embrace joy without fear. We began to share our relationship publicly, modestly, a simple couple's photo at a farmer's market, holding coffee, laughing naturally. No grand statements, no dramatic captions. Within hours, messages from friends poured in, some shocked, some elated. But the best part? Alex had no control, no leverage. His attempts at interference fizzled into irrelevance. And then came the small, poetic irony. Messages from Alex still arrived occasionally, often from unknown numbers, desperate, sometimes pleading. I know we had something real, or maybe we can fix this. I deleted them without a second thought. Each deletion felt like a stitch in the tapestry of my new life, one not tainted by manipulation or deceit. Ethan and I found humor in the absurdity of the situation. Late one evening, after blocking another frantic message from Alex, we sat on my balcony, the city lights glittering below. "Can you believe he's still trying?" I said, shaking my head. Ethan laughed, the sound warm against the chill night air. "People like him, they never learn. But look at us. We're fine. Better than fine." I smiled, feeling the weight of months of betrayal lifting. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't anxious, suspicious, or fearful. I was free. And I was with someone who made honesty and respect feel natural, effortless. Closure didn't come with fireworks or dramatic confrontations. It came in the quiet moments. Shared laughter over coffee, supportive glances in a crowded room, and the knowledge that I had reclaimed my life on my own terms. Alex faded, irrelevant and powerless. Even the final attempts at drama, mutual friends trying to intervene, petty messages, or public accusations, crumbled under the clarity of truth. I had proof, I had Ethan, and I had myself, and that was enough. One Sunday morning, Ethan and I walked through the city park, the crisp air filled with the scent of wet leaves and early blooms. I felt my hand brush against his, naturally, comfortably. He smiled, and the warmth of that smile anchored me. I realized something profound. Life didn't have to be a battlefield of deceit and manipulation. It could be quiet, simple, joyful. It could be shared with someone who truly saw you. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future untethered from Alex's shadow. A life of trust, laughter, and honesty. A life where I didn't have to second-guess love, where my instincts were respected, and where connection wasn't a trap, but a sanctuary. The city buzzed around us, indifferent, unaware of the drama that had consumed my life, and I walked through it, hand in hand with Ethan, feeling light, empowered, and unshakably alive. Alex's chapter was over. Ethan's had just begun, and in the quiet joy of a new beginning, I knew that for the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.